Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about what everyone is talking about. Elon Musk has put in the offer, the bid for Twitter, and people are going nuts about it. I'm sure people at Twitter are crapping their pants, and there's people have different opinions on it. Mark Cuban thinks he's just screwing with the, with the big guns and doesn't really think he's going to do it, or if he doesn't, he's just going to sell a stock. But he's also like, people are concerned that if people don't take the Twitter offer, it's going to tank the stock. But he thinks that there's other people who can come in and swoop in and buy it, and people are calling to try to get like one of their good guys to sort of buy it so Elon doesn't do it. So there's all kinds of hot takes, and it's very interesting to see how it ends. It's like watching Succession, but not watching the panic behind the scenes, but like imagining the behind the scenes panic. If you ever watched Succession, which is a pretty good show, but I didn't like the last season as much as like other seasons, but the final episodes really revved up, and it ended up being about pretty much a takeover or selling of the company. So that's what's, as I read these articles, that's really in my head, like the piano music from the intro, if you've ever seen the show. But it's very interesting, very exciting. And to think, honestly, it could all lead to like a big decision. Deciding to do this could really be about banning the Babylon Bee. Oh, if they could turn back time, which we will go back in time and look at a couple of those tweets which have led to this sort of bit of a takeover. And if you're wondering where the hookers comes in from the title today, did the president pay for hookers? People are looking more into Hunter Biden's laptop, as the arbiters of truth of the New York Times and the Post and all these folks have decided that actually it's true and it's real, even though we knew that in 2020 that it was real, and people were confirming that it was real, but they didn't want it to be real. So they got all these people to sign on and say, oh, this is Russian disinformation, which obviously it wasn't. But the people who keep trying to belittle Hunter Biden's laptop, they're like, oh, it's the president's son. Oh, he's a private citizen. And they'll just say, oh, Biden was a private citizen at some of the time that this took place. But that's not all true. And again, it's not legitimate. It's not a legitimate opinion, because if it wasn't about Hunter Biden, it was about Trump Jr. Come on, like Don Jr., they'd be all over the story nonstop. Maybe CNN's numbers wouldn't be in the tank, because they'd be doing stories about every sort of revelation, every crack pipe, every hooker, doing background checks and live stories, and maybe have movie deals with the hookers and access to the sex tapes and all kinds of stuff's been going on. So let's not act like it's not an interesting story. But it also does tie to Joe, and it is always tied to Joe. Do we have some proof right now of some wire transfers and stuff? I don't think there's anything like that right now, but there are emails and texts that have always tied and implicated Biden in the money scheme with his son. So in one of them today I read, which is pretty funny to me, with his checking account, I guess, being tied to Hunter, while Hunter transferred like $25,000 to an escort. So I'm like, oh, he kind of paid for an escort. So I thought that was funny, and I already shared that on Facebook, but we're gonna talk about today. Also, I saw the story, the Shade Room. I think 50 Cent posted it, and my sister shared it in our group chat. So there's a women's prison in New Jersey that the ACLU was fighting to be able to get trans women in the prisons, and now there's, guess what, pregnant women in the prisons. Whether people are meaning to sleep with the trans person or other kind of nefarious things are going on. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Not how it's supposed to be. So these are subjects we're talking about today. Got a lot of tea today that we're gonna fit into this. We're gonna keep it under, an hour. I think today we're gonna try to. Um, but before we jump into everything, please make sure you guys go to blacktnews.com. Check out different articles on the website. Check out different videos that are on the website. Please make sure that you guys check out different merchandise that's on the website as well. That's a good way to support the show. Also, if you like what I do here and you want to directly support it in giving a donation, go to blacktnews.com/support. I'm sorry, that's blacktnews.com/donate. But if you go to the website and there's clearly a donate button, very easy to follow and figure out how to do that. I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to do that. And there are costs associated with what I'm doing, but also want to expand, and I'm excited about some of the projects and stuff we have coming up. So I thank everyone who's participated in that, and I got some other things up in the works that I'm excited to share. But we will when it's an appropriate time. And please make sure that you guys are liking across all social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter. All my handles are at Black T News, with the exception of Twitter. That one is at True Black T. All my links are in the Facebook and YouTube if that's where you guys are watching. So you guys can just click, and make sure you're following me across the different platforms as well. I do want to thank Brand Mission Pack. I am in their studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, nobody cares. There's no one. There's absolutely no one that cares. You can't tattle on me. That's not how it works. I'm just using the space. I appreciate how they want to uplift conservative voices. So kudos to them and all the work that they do in Michigan. I do have some funny memes today. FYI, I did push the show back to 5 o'clock today. Reason being, I had some work to do in my car. It's really that simple. I'm a everyday person like you guys. My car had an issue, and I needed to get checked out and fixed, and had a bill to pay associated with the car. So that is all settled. Not going to die on the way home driving from some kind of incident. It wasn't that deep anyway, but it's fixed. So if you're curious, just being transparent. So I do have a funny meme today. I have two actually. One is from Midnight Mitch, and the other is from Grand Old Memes, and they are all related to Elon Musk, who we will cover firstly. So this one is Midnight Mitch. If you guys recall, back in the day, when Trump was elected, you had this person at the inauguration who's pretty famous from yelling no. Why don't you build your own Twitter? And Elon's like, why don't I just buy yours? And then the no. So that's what people on the left say. If you don't like it, it's a private company. Just go build your own, just whatever. So at this point, you did have people who went out and tried to build their own. So with Parler, for example, they went out there and they made their own thing. People started joining it. And then you had Apple and Google and these folks who were like, you can't come on our thing, and just kind of coalesce together to kick them off their devices that really just kneecap them. So it's really hard to go out and build your own thing when everyone is trying to conspire against you at every turn. So there's that. It does cost a lot to build something up like that. So you need some capital and some gumption and people who are willing to do that and take that somewhere. Now, of course, it's not impossible to do that, because once upon a time there was MySpace. That was a social media site where everyone was at. And if you're really young watching this, you're like, what is that? MySpace. I think I was still in high school, I think, maybe when that popped off. I don't know if I was in middle school at the time when it did. Or when I had one. I know I had one in high school. But Facebook, I have had a Facebook account for as long as back in the day when they required that you had an EDU account. So I've been on Facebook for a long time. When everybody started jumping on Facebook, that obviously made the love of MySpace go down, and then it basically just became like I think people posted like music and stuff on it. But everyone really liked MySpace, how customizable it was and all that kind of stuff. But I think I don't know, just a lot of people connected on Facebook, and I think people sort of like the sleekness of it. Facebook has really grown obviously since then. It's funny if you watch them film The Social Network and they're like ads are dumb. I'm like, oh, is that how you really feel, Zuckerberg? Because it's clearly not how you feel anymore. Because if you're on Facebook, I think every third thing is an ad. Like if you scroll, like don't scroll right now because you're watching me. But when you're done, just like scroll like three things down, and I think there's an ad every third thing. So they definitely are into that now. Of course, they sell your data. It is very much about making money. But there are other platforms, and some of them have been bought up. Like Instagram popped up, and then they bought Instagram. TikTok at first was Musically, and that just grew insanely. TikTok, the people who run it are so unfair in life, but it is a fun platform, and it's probably my favorite one out of all the ones that I use. Just to be frank, I do really like TikTok, but you got some crappy people who run it. So um, Elon Musk thinks there's a lot of potential with Twitter, but it won't be unlocked until they start really pushing free speech like they claim, like they want to. So anyway, I thought that was a very funny meme from Midnight Mitch. Um, so this one is for Right to Bear Memes, which is kind of the same thing. I just I just thought that one was funny too, with the Twitter bird screaming. So there's a lot of people really upset and screaming. Someone said they honestly miss MySpace. I know people who really liked it that were really bummed that everyone left. Again, a lot of customization. People took a lot of time building their page, and people will compliment how people's pages looked and stuff. Um, but it Facebook killed it for sure. Facebook killed it for sure. I think you can still get on it though. I have no idea what my password to that would be. It was so long ago since I've ever looked at that, if I'm even there at all on MySpace. But everybody went to Facebook. Everybody went to Facebook. So how did all this sort of begin with Elon Musk? So Elon has, and I don't say you have to trust the guy. A lot of people like the guy. A lot of people like. There's a lot of jokes about African Americans and how they're so appalled. I think it was Michael Knowles who said he's so appalled that the left is fighting against an African American, which Elon is technically. So, which I've heard people joke about how Elon is their favorite African American. But people have pointed out in the past that, you know, that like Mike Cernovich, he suggested by Twitter, if you're a leftist making death threats against conservatives or organizing riots, Twitter respects their freedom of speech. Twitter also respects the freedom of speech for media hoaxes, like when every major outlet framed an innocent Covington High School kid. And Elon said, doesn't sound very balanced. And Jack Posobiec said, buy it and make it and take it private. So that's what Elon is doing. He's made the offer to do. Okay, but before he went all hostile takeover, like world domination sort of thing, he did buy the shares. But before he made the move to buy the shares, he talked to the Babylon Bee. If you guys recall, some time ago, the Babylon Bee was censored on Twitter, and they were ordered by Twitter to remove something that they had made. So Rachel Levin, who's our Assistant Secretary of Health, is a trans woman. And so USA Today named Levin as one of their Women of the Year. Obviously, a big problem with that. So the Babylon Bee had tweeted, I believe it was, saying that the Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levin. So Twitter thought that violated their conduct and said it was hateful conduct, and you may not promote violence, threaten or harass other people on the basis of their race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. And I do believe that you need to really still leave leeway for comedy for certain stuff. And Twitter has allowed people to have death threats and other kind of stuff. People have like messaged uncomfortable sort of sexual things to me, and I've like reported it, and And it, even how you report it, it's like they made you feel uncomfortable. It's like it wasn't even like that direct. It was like someone just basically sexually assaulted me in the comments and what they're, and you don't, and he's making me seem like it's just a my feeling issue, and I'm like, no, you should. I don't know. I didn't even like the reporting thing of that, but something like this can get you booted off of Twitter for saying something that's legitimately. I mean, the joke is he's their man of the year, but Rachel Levin is a man, and there's nothing hateful about reality. It's just the truth. He can identify as a woman all he wants, but that's still, it is what it is. So the CEO, Seth Dillon, said, "We're not deleting anything. Truth is not hate speech. If the cost of telling the truth is a loss of our Twitter account, then so be it." So another thing that's interesting is that other platforms, we talked about this too, other platforms will just delete your post, and maybe they'll give you some kind of strike violation or whatever. But Twitter makes you delete the post. It's part of like their humiliation ritual, I think. That you have to do it. Like, you have to admit that you did something wrong and be humiliated and just go in there and delete it. If it's so heinous, if it's so bad, why wouldn't Twitter themselves just get rid of it? Why is it that they have to make you delete something that is just like objectively true? So I don't know, maybe it's part of their social credit score sort of thing, but Babylon B CEO was like, no. So Babylon B has been locked out for a minute. Charlie Kirk got suspended for a similar tweet, but I believe he still has his account. Tucker Carlson commented on the Babylon B and Charlie Kirk, and then Tucker Carlson got censored. Last I heard, I don't know if Tucker ever got his account back, because he got, some people were passing around a fake tweet of Twitter of Tucker Carlson, including Adam Kinzinger and other folks, and he couldn't tweet out, "You guys are wrong," passing around a fake tweet, because he wasn't on Twitter. He was able to address it on the show, and that's how I found out about it. But Twitter is very, very, very good at censoring people that they feel is dangerous, even though they may be saying things that are accurate and true. I mentioned the other day that because a lot of people are like, Elon come back and let Trump come back. Now, I don't know if in the long run that's actually going to help Trump himself. I mean, there are days I was like, when people said, "Did you hear what Trump tweeted?" I was like, part of me was like dreading, and part of me was like ready to laugh. And a lot of times I would read the tweet and I would just laugh. It would be hilarious. He can tweet out some very funny things. And sometimes I would cringe. So it's like, will it hurt Trump? Will it help Trump? Who knows? It would definitely help Twitter, though. So that's the crazy thing about Twitter and all these folks permanently banning him from social media. Because there's people still who love him and will, I don't know, follow him. There's people who will stand on the highway waving Trump flags. I'm like, if only people love Jesus as much. Like, I'm not saying they don't love Jesus, but I just see more people waving Trump flags than doing, that sort of evangelizing. It seems like, I don't know. It was just a thought. So there's people who still love him regardless of whether he's on social media or not. So them trying to just censor him just makes him look like still someone who they're all frightened of and someone they need to censor. So I don't know if it's actually having the effect that I want. Personally, I think they did it more to hurt him. I know they're hysterical, so maybe they're not thinking things all the way through, but I think they personally wanted to hurt Trump because they know that he loves communicating in that sort of way. He's obviously addicted to the Twitter. But getting rid of, like, if he speaks on YouTube and stuff and they just take it down, or you can't stream it on YouTube with someone who is the president of the United States, that's really, really ridiculous. And Twitter got rid of him at a time when he was like, "I'm not going to go to the inauguration." And they're like, he could be signaling people that it's okay to attack. And I'm like, okay, well, he clearly didn't, but you just put that thought out in the atmosphere. So that's not cool. Like, so Twitter doesn't, they're not fair. And in even regards other than Trump, Cernovich mentioned the Covington kid. That was misinformation and slander with that kid that just spread like wildfire. He was just a kid who was standing, smiling, and people were like, "Oh, what a punchable face," while this older elderly Native American guy was just kind of dancing and being rude around him, but they thought the kid was so awful. That story really spread. People spread crazy misinformation about uh Kyle Rittenhouse on Twitter. They spread misinformation regarding COVID, and if you said something that was true but didn't go with their mainstream and what they approved of, you were flagged for misinformation when they got stuff wrong all the time. And of course, one of the most egregious things is the Hunter Biden laptop, which we will get to today, talking about a little bit more about that. But they silenced the New York Post. They made up some rule and claimed that it was because it was hacked materials, which it wasn't hacked. Hunter Biden left his laptop in a computer store in Delaware, and he's lost like 3 of them, I guess, technically. So and if you're like, that sounds like a crazy story, remember, he's a crackhead, anything sort of goes. It did sound sketchy at first, and from my perspective, I'm like, man, that sounds weird, but obviously it was true. Obviously it was true. We all knew it was true, but they didn't want it to be true, so they censored it. They suppressed the story, locked them out of their account and stuff for a while. Oldest paper in the country. So Twitter is not someone who values free speech, and Elon Musk knows it. So he was asked about buying it. But before I play that video, I do want to point out, since I mentioned the Babylon Bee, the CEO of the Babylon Bee actually did mention Musk reached out to us before he polled his followers about Twitter's commitment to free speech. He wanted to confirm that we had, in fact, been suspended. He even mused on the call that he might need to buy Twitter. Now he's the largest shareholder and has a seat on the board. So he doesn't have that seat anymore, but so he did poll a poll. So I do have the poll. So here was the poll. Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle? And so only 29.6% said yes, and 70.4% said no. And there was over 2 million people who responded to this poll. And he said the consequences of this poll will be important. Please vote carefully. And I did participate in this poll. You can probably guess what I said. So there you go. So he Babylon Bee gets asked. He contacts the CEO of the Babylon Bee, which is a parody website, a Christian parody website, which, by the way, the left hates so much. They would literally fact check a parody site to try to ding its credibility, so the algorithm won't pick them up as much on like Facebook and other sort of platforms. That's how they operate. I was complaining to someone last night. I said, I've been flagged for misinformation by the fact checkers and stuff over things I didn't even say. Like how I reported wasn't even the thing that they fact checked about, but they thought it was somewhere in the same ballpark or whatever, so it got picked up in whatever crazy algorithm itself. So, which was just really, really annoying. But they don't care if you're really saying things that are untrue. They just want to get you for saying things that they don't like. That's how they operate. They're all in cahoots with each other. So he didn't like what they did to the CEO. So he went ahead and bought not the majority, but the most shares out of everybody on Twitter. And then Twitter, he didn't want a seat at the board. He rejected that because they were only offering him 1 seat, and you can't do much as one person on the board. But the big thing was they would not allow him to buy more than 15%. It had to be less than 50%. They had vowed to not buy more than that. So when he rejected that, people were like, he's going to go hard and maybe try to buy the whole thing. And so that's what I also talked about and reported as well with that speculation. But it was still speculation at the time, and a lot of hopeful wishes from people. And of course, he has gone hard with the $41 billion offer. And it's a generous asking price. Some people are trying to say that it's not, to weasel their way out of it. And right now, as I'm talking, it's a developing story. So if something changes, you guys can let me know. But this is just talking about it as it's sort of going down. Now, there are people who believe at the end of the day, well, they're saying that Mark Cuban has said every major tech company, Google, Facebook, etc., is all on the phone with their antitrust lawyers asking if they can buy Twitter and get it approved. And Twitter is on the phone with their lawyers asking which can be their white knight. Gonna be interesting because they do not want someone like Elon Musk having control and leveling the playing field. And Mark Cuban also pointed out, like, why wouldn't someone who's also like not like US friendly come in and try to also buy those shares as well, or try to buy up Twitter so they can have all this control over the platform. I don't think it's great that all these people are using TikTok and it's like a China company. Trump tried to get that shut down because of the spyware and all the kind of stuff that's in it. That's why I didn't have one for the longest time. But I eventually, relented. Got it. But man, I listened to someone on a podcast and they were talking about like if the algorithm in China with TikTok, they show people what they want them to see, right? And so if you're doing stuff on in China, they're showing stuff to kids about engineering and all this other kind of crap that would be really, really productive. And with American kids, they're showing, I don't know, how to twerk the best or some little dumb dance move or whatever, or I don't know, learning about all the trans words and stuff. So they have different priorities that they want Americans to have versus what they want their own citizens to have. So it's interesting, and I'm definitely on the app trying to not join them but beat them and beat back that ideology that they have. But they certainly do have some really big accounts that share some really destructive ideologies and perspectives, and some of those folks have even been brought to the White House to continue spreading misinformation and propaganda. So got to find in the culture wars, but no one is doing it better than Elon Musk right now. So I bet they're wishing that they did not go as far as they did with just a little conservative Christian parody website. They and Elon Musk, I don't know how tight he is with those folks, but he did do a podcast with Babylon Bee, which I was like, wow, that's really impressive. I think it was their Not the Bee podcast. But I'm sure you can see other things going on with Twitter, but that was probably a big one, especially since they didn't say anything hateful and it was something that was obviously true. But here's Elon talking a little bit about all this.
Was there a question?
Why make that offer?
Well, I think it's very important for there to be an inclusive arena for free speech where all, Twitter has become kind of the de facto town square. It's just really important that people have both the reality and the perception that they are able to speak freely within the bounds of the law. So one of the things that I believe Twitter should do is open source the algorithm and make any changes to people's tweets. If they're emphasized or de-emphasized, that action should be made apparent so anyone can see that action has been taken. So there's no sort of behind-the-scenes manipulation, either algorithmically or manually.
So it seems like he's going to try to rule with some transparency and other stuff, and we'll see if he's able to unlock the potential of Twitter. And there's a lot of people saying that they'll be out if he takes over. If it's functioning in the same manner, but it's just more fair, why would that make you not want to be on the platform anymore? Other than you throwing a big hissy fit. And as I don't know if I finished his thought, but it's amazing that the shareholders and everyone sort of decided on Twitter that it would be best for Trump not to be on, which I think that was really more personal toward them not liking Trump. But Trump does make their Twitter experience more valuable. Because people would talk about what Trump would tweet day to day. People go on it. People would participate. He tweeted all the time, and he had a huge account. Some of these people with really big accounts, like Justin Bieber, I don't think he's tweeted all year. Taylor Swift hasn't tweeted in months, and which Elon Musk pointed out that some of the biggest accounts on the app don't even use the app. So if you had someone like Trump back on, he loved it. He loved tweeting, and people interacted with him all the time. It was he could tweet out something and it was a news story for days. So for people to still decide, hey, we got to get rid of Trump, he's too dangerous to be on, when you have people who say the most hateful things, people who go out and use social media platforms for terror, um for acts of terror, for shootings, or planning, like Antifa and other guys will plan demonstrations, and that will lead to, people looting and rioting, and doing all kinds of other stuff, or even just bailing out people who did bad things, like the Minnesota Freedom Fund that Kamala Harris tweeted out, and you had Steve Carell, and Harry Styles, and all these folks who tweeted all this other stuff out, and which got them a lot of money. And they don't care what you've been accused of; they just don't like cash bail, so they'll bail you out. And actually, some people that they did bail out went out to commit other crimes again, including murder. So, tweet responsibly, kids. Um, but those kind of people can rule and reign and do what they want. But if you tweet that Rachel Levin is a man, which is true, then they don't like you too much. So kudos to Elon Musk. It's very, very interesting. As I said, I keep thinking about the show Succession, and I want to see what happens. I'm rooting for him. I'm curious if anyone will be able to like come in and make a better offer. And that's probably what a lot of people are hoping for. If he said it's his best and his final offer. And it's a good offer, and it's over what the shares are worth. So there's got to be people who are interested. There's a lot of people who are woke driving the things at Twitter, but not everyone associated at every single spec is driven by ideology. Some people care about their money. And some people care about what's best for them. So if he can get like a big chunk of folks and still keep them, like he said, I want to keep as many people as legally within the private, when they move it private, as possible. So he's enticing folks. Is he doing it to, I don't know, make a buck when he shares his stock and stuff or drives it down? I don't know exactly what his end game is going to be, but what he's doing right now is fascinating. It's fascinating. And as I said, the tea is good. The tea is good. So let's move on to Joe Biden and the Hunter Biden story. And I said I haven't talked like a huge amount about it because it's something I definitely talked about at the time when it was super relevant. And it's always been relevant, especially now since Biden is in the White House. But it's not new news to me that all this stuff is true. Like New York Times, Washington Post, Bloomberg, whoever, who are acknowledging that it's real. NPR was like, we're not going to cover the story because it's ridiculous. It's not real. It's like a waste of time and blah, blah, blah. Like, but it's all true. It was all true. Very, very relevant. And if this was about Donald Trump Jr.'s laptop and he left it somewhere and had all those hookers and drugs and him enriching himself and then paying his dad like 50% of his money, I think Trump would have been impeached again, That's what I think. So people trying to pretend like it's not relevant are not honest. They're just not honest in the least bit. Not at all. So if it was just solely about Hunter and there was nothing connecting back to Biden, and or let's say that it was just Donald Trump Jr. and there weren't things that were connecting back to Trump, the people who are saying it doesn't matter because it's about Hunter would still be on this, talking about this nonstop. They just would. People were mad about Ivanka's clothes. People were making stories about the first lady and whether people or not wanted her to wear their clothes or not. People made stories about Barron, and then people had to say, don't pick on Barron, he's a child. People had stories about when Melania did the lawn, and they're like, oh, it's an ode to white supremacy. Like, just said all kinds of crazy stories. So for people to pretend that anything related to Hunter Biden just isn't newsworthy are just lying. People made stories about how Trump fed koi fish. Is he afraid of stairs? all kinds of crazy stories that people made up and ran with and went in the news cycle, and it's just not true. And Applebaum of the Atlantic over the weekend, they had a disinformation conference, and some brave, amazing college activist kids just went there and asked some questions, and they weren't hard questions, and they asked her about Hunter Biden's laptop, and she's like, it's just not an interesting story. Hack. She's a hack. And you had Jonah Goldberg, who said, well, it wouldn't have made any difference. There was a poll that said like 16% of Joe Biden's voters would have made a different decision, or it would have impacted how they voted. And we were talking about when you had small margins in places like Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin or whatever, maybe that kind of stuff could make a difference, especially if the media covered it like you would normally cover an October surprise that would be that big. I mean, Bush, it almost derailed, I think, his election because of some past maybe DUI, or there was a story about him like falling in a peanut or something. And like there's back in the day, like certain stories could just totally crash your presidency. And to think that something like this doesn't do a dent, well, they wouldn't let it do a dent. They did everything they could to protect it and denounce it, and had people lie and say that it was Russian misinformation or looked like Russian disinformation, and they signed their names to it. And it was all true, and people were confirming it was true at the time, including Hunter's business partners, including just people who were in the emails that I was just noticing online. So I know people who are journalists who have all these sources could figure out what I knew just reading some darn Twitter threads. But they didn't want to acknowledge it. So anyway, the New York Post, who's had access to this stuff for a while, just putting out an article on the 9th talking about Hunter Biden frequently covered family expenses. Text reveals Hunter Biden's access to lucrative financial opportunities also came with expectations, including kickbacks as much as 50% of his earnings to his dad. Text messages on his old laptop show, which is not new information either. Maybe they just feel like they need to remind people of some of the stuff. I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years, Hunter Biden said to his daughter, Naomi, in January 2019. It's really hard, but don't worry. Unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half of your salary. And Pop, of course, is Joe Biden. The laptop infamously abandoned at a Delaware repair shop in April 2019 does not contain any direct evidence of such money transfers, but does show that Hunter was routinely on the hook for his father's household expenses while Joe Biden was vice president. That's interesting. So if he's using his dad to get money and then paying for stuff, himself, there's connections and stuff there at least. Okay. So I think that's relevant. The expenses are spelled out in an email to Hunter from a business partner, Eric Sherwin, from June 5th, 2010, titled JRB Bills. They concerned the upkeep for Joe Biden's lakefront home in the wealthy Greenville enclave of Wilmington, Delaware. JRB are President Biden's initials. There are 1,239 repairs to the air conditioner at Mom's Cottage, and another 1,475 to a painter for a black wall and columns at the lake house. There was also another 2,600 for fixing up a stone retailing wall at the lake, and 475 for shutters. In an email 5 days later, Sherwin said he received Joe Biden's Delaware tax refund check, which suggests he had personal access to the Veep's finances. Sherwin was serving as president of Rosemont Seneca Partners, Hunter Biden's Chinese-linked investment firm. The email ties President Biden even more closely to the messy web of his son's business dealings. There's also evidence of Joe Biden sometimes reimbursing his son. I am depositing it in his account and writing a check in that amount back to you since he owes it to you. Don't think I need to run it by him if you want to go ahead, Sherwin wrote. In a July 6, 2010 email titled JRB Future Memo, Sherwin said he was in touch with the vice president about his personal financial matters and was eager to start discussions with him about how to cash in when he left office. Your dad just called me about his mortgage and mentioned he'd be out a lot soon and not really back until Labor Day. He could use some positive news about his future earnings potential. Father and son's linked finances, first reported by the Post last July, went well beyond household upkeep and sometimes spilled over into Hunter Biden's debauched personal life. In May 2018, during a drug and alcohol binge in Los Angeles, Hunter Biden accidentally transferred around $25,000 to an escort named Gulnora. He was immediately visited by Secret Service, suggesting that the money came from a joint account with his father. Hunter received a series of text messages from a former agent who repeatedly urged him to come out of his hotel room and reminded him this is linked to the Celtics account. Celtic was Joe Biden's Secret Service code name when he was vice president. So when you guys, I don't know, if someone said, is the president paying for hookers? I don't know if you guys thought I meant it was a Trump joke. I don't know if you guys thought I meant Bill Clinton, but no, I was talking about Joe Biden. I don't know why you would have your checking account, any sort of bank account linked to we're just gonna say a blatant screw up like that, but a really crackhead like Hunter. That seems crazy to me, not the best judgment. But I don't know, maybe they felt it was easier to join it when Hunter paid for such things for the family and have their finances interlinked like that. I don't know. But can't you see how they intermingle in some regard? There's something that we're missing, I think, something that we're still not seeing. But to pretend that they're not linked and that the fact that Hunter was profiting off of his father's name and him telling his kids that he's, giving half to dad and that he's still paying for stuff, for different repairs and other stuff with upkeep and whatnot. They're absolutely connected. So people to pretend like the Hunter Biden story is just Hunter Biden's business is crazy. And when people ask Jen Psaki about it, she has a really funky attitude, and it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny, but hey, she's going to MSNBC. Not that there's a conflict of interest with her still being the press secretary, whatever. She's going to enjoy her time until she goes. But it is a massive fiasco in the White House, and I heard Republicans, McCarthy said they have to be careful about like doing impeachment, and people were upset about that. They're like they shouldn't impeach him for political reasons, and some people were like, no, you shouldn't do it for political reasons. You should do it for criminal reasons. That's why. So yeah, it's kind of one, it's embarrassing. It's unbelievable. It's not unbelievable like I can't believe it happened, but it's just still unbelievable in the sense that we allowed this to happen, especially all the crazy stuff people said about Trump. But then you actually get all these real like evidence things with Biden using his influence in this regard. While son did all this crazy stuff, it's just crazy. It's just so crazy. And you can't say, well, it was him or Trump, but no, those weren't the only options. First of all, Trump was a pretty good president. So to jump from him to go on this downward slope all the way straight to hell in Joe Biden's America, that's crazy. You made an epic mistake, and people should admit that now. I think it's safe to admit that now. But when they were just two angry men, on the debate stage, if you go back a little bit further than that, the Democrats did have primaries, and they did have other options. I don't believe that all this stuff going on was just evidenced in a laptop and no one else knew about this stuff. And we can only know because the New York Times said it was legitimate. Other people must have had wind of some of this stuff. I mean, they're grapevines and stuff within the realm that I know. I know these people in DC and in these realm of politics knew more about the Biden crime family. Come on. There are all kind of reports coming out before that. So people are like, well, that was our only option. No, it wasn't the only option. I don't know why people decided Joe Biden was their best option. I have no idea. I mean, I have somewhat of an idea. My theory is that I still think people expected that Trump was going to pull it off. People were very concerned still about pulling it off. I think they were obviously willing to move heaven and earth to make sure that did not happen regardless. With COVID and lockdowns and fake governor kidnappings and all kinds of stuff, I think they were willing to do whatever to not get Trump in office, period. However, just in case that it was a shoe-in or whatever, because the economy was good and all that kind of stuff before, and people might remember the better days and whatnot and feel that he deserved another chance. If that was the case, they were willing to let Joe Biden fail because he doesn't have that much time. Even Joe Biden kind of said he's a placeholder president, which I don't know why that inspired confidence for people to cast that ballot in that regard. But he admitted that, I think, on the campaign trail that he was a placeholder president. So I think people knew like he was worth the sacrifice if things didn't go their way. So I think that is mostly like Joe Biden was saying, I'm the only one who can beat Trump. If people bought into that, that doesn't make sense to me, especially knowing all the things that they did to make sure Trump wasn't president. So I don't personally buy that. Maybe people on their side bought it. To me, it didn't make sense. It never made sense. They could have propped up someone else and made a better case. They really could have. Maybe Joe Biden made a lot of deals, had a lot of favors. At the end of the day, they really wanted to push him through to I don't know, satisfy his ego and get whatever they want out of him. And maybe they're getting enough kickbacks behind the scenes that they're willing to lose Congress and all the kind of stuff upcoming for the shellacking that they have, and they don't care too much about how he's running things into the ground because they're fatting their own pockets at the end of the day. So screw everybody else, and it doesn't matter. Even if they lose some political capital here and there, they'll be back next time bigger and better and whatever. I don't know, but mostly I think the theory is that Joe Biden was worth the sacrifice, and I think the same for Kamala too. I think they are willing to like throw her, in the pyre with him. She couldn't even win her own like primary in California, dropped out before she got humiliated. So that's my theory. But now he's president and he's screwing everything up. He's just extraordinarily bad. And that's where I find the conflict too, because I'm like, I know they know better, at least to a degree. I know they know better, yet they still persist. So I think there's a lot behind the scenes that are making it worth it for them to pursue this destructive path. I don't think they're all like commies who want to destroy the planet and destroy America. I think there are definitely people like that in positions of power for sure. But I don't think that's the thing that's driving Biden toward recommending like people, medically castrate their kids with like hormones and puberty blockers and stuff like that. There's something darker behind the scenes that makes more sense than that. But I know we got to live with it for a little bit while, guys, unfortunately. Last thing I want to mention today is there's a story, and my sister actually told me about this last night. We were in group chat, and she sent it in 50 Cent did a screenshot of it, and I think they shared it in the shade room. And he's just like, what is going on here? Because there's a women's prison in New Jersey, and they have pregnant inmates. Surprise, surprise. I don't know why people obviously not surprise. That kind of stuff could obviously happen when you put men and women together. But the ACLU forced an all-female prison to take transgender inmates. Now 2 prisoners are pregnant. This is from the Free Beacon. 2 inmates at a New Jersey women's prison are pregnant after they had sex with one or more transgender inmates. The female Edna Mahan Correctional Facility in Clinton, New Jersey, began housing biologically male transgender prisoners following a settlement last year in a lawsuit brought by the American Civil Liberties Union of New Jersey. Aren't these groups so fun? The Federal Bureau of Prisons, which is part of the Biden Justice Department, just revised its operating procedures to allow criminal access to sex change operations or related therapeutics, the Washington Free Beacon reported on April 1st. The prison houses 27 transgender inmates and does not require them to have undergone sexual reassignment surgery, the Daily Mail reported. That is crazy. That is crazy. So you have people who don't even have to be dedicated to go all the way to step down there and say, you know what, I'm a woman. And they're like, okay, that's cool. You can go ahead right to the women's prison where you're not going to be jumped in the shower by men who are bigger than you, and you can go do that to ladies. That is crazy. That is crazy. And I don't mean that in a cute euphemism kind of way. I mean that is like literally psychotic. Let's go on. Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, which was launched an investigation, has not yet said whether the women had sex with the same transgender inmate or with different inmates. It did say that in both instances, sex was consensual, even though the prison has seen accusations of sexual abuse. ACLU legal director Jeannie Locicero defended the policy her organization forced on the prison housing biologically male individuals in women's prison is in the line of New Jersey's strong anti-discrimination laws that prevent discrimination and harassment on the basis of gender identity. This is not the first time Edna Mann was faced with a scandal over housing transgender individuals. 2 female inmates filed a lawsuit last year to overturn the policy, saying that transgender prisons harass them. So, yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's up there with the absurdities of this world. So yesterday I responded to a video. I'm gonna do a specific TikTok response to it though. Let's see if it gets my account. I don't foresee them keeping it up on TikTok for very long, but we'll see. Sometimes they surprise me. But I responded to someone who was a trans woman, and he was mansplaining why cisgender is okay to say, even though there's all these women are saying, please stop saying that. We're just women. You don't have to make up some kind of silly word. We're just women. And he was saying no one's trying to take the word women from you, or no one's trying to take womanhood from you, your experience from you, etc. Blah blah blah. That's not what we're totally concerned about, though I don't legitimately believe you, but you can't take away womanhood from us, but you are trying to make our lives more difficult. For sure. It's not that you're taking away womanhood, but you are taking away particular opportunities. Like Fox News is having Caitlyn Jenner be on their show, as a on their shows as a commentator, paid commentator, and I feel like they're doing that because he's come out and talked about women in sports and saying it's not fair for them to compete, etc. Jenner did run for in the recall election against Newsom, obviously lost. Newsom still governor, and the front runner was Larry Elder. And when Jenner did different interviews to me, just kind of said like regular normal republicanisms that you'd say, not a lot of depth, but I do believe that Jenner's Republican and has conservative leanings. I'm not doubting that, but one thing that does bother me, and I do appreciate Jenner standing up for women in sports, I absolutely do. But I still resent the fact that Jenner accepted a Woman of the Year award. I do. So that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. It's not just like women on sports teams being decimated, and I do think that is a graver problem than Rachel Levin being one of the women of the year, or Jenner being a woman of the year back in the day. As a matter of fact, when when Ben Shapiro started the Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings, that originated, he was on, I believe this is where he originated, when he was on Dr. Drew's show, and they were talking about Jenner winning this award, and Ben was kind of quiet for a minute while they all talked a lot, and then he's like, "Why are we mainstreaming delusion?" And so he was sitting right next to this transgender woman, Katie Tur, and Katie got really mad, put his hands on Ben, and was like, "If you keep this up, I'm going to take you. You're going home in an ambulance." And Ben Shapiro is such a nerd. He's such a nerd that I don't even know if his instincts started functioning at all, that he could be in possible danger. Or I don't know, maybe he's more masculine than he kind of puts off. But he's just like thinking to himself after this Katie's much bigger than him, put his hands on Ben, said, "Keep this up, you're going home in an ambulance." And in Ben Shapiro's mind, he said, well, that's dumb, because you don't go home in an ambulance. Like, he didn't say that out loud, but when he tells the story back, that's what he says. Which, by the way, you can go home in an ambulance, because if you are leaving the hospital, sometimes they will transfer you in an ambulance if you still are like bedridden or something like that. So, a little fact check on Ben there. But that's where that whole originated from, the conversation. So I haven't forgotten Jenner still accepting the Woman of the Year thing. So so that's an opportunity, or something that was taken away from a woman. When you have someone like Leah Thomas, obviously that took away a lot of opportunities from women. And the most egregious thing, I mean, there's lots of egregious things going on in regard to the Leah Thomas saga, including Leah still having his genitals and his junk sometimes being visible in the locker room, and them not doing anything about it at times when the women feel uncomfortable, which I would feel extraordinarily comfortable, but I would not have put up with all that kind of stuff, just to be frank. And you could say, you don't know what it's like to be in that position. I know who I am. And I would not have put up with all that kind of stuff, nor saying she, and be like, well, I still respect her. Like, no, that's a man swimming beside you all. So I know who I am. I know who I would have been in that position. Of course, I'm not fit enough to be in that position or whatever, but that's besides the point. If I was in that position, I wouldn't have just like cried silently, leaking stuff to the Daily Mail, and just, gone along with it. If I was parents, I would have showed up with shirts that said like, "This is a dude." I just would not have gone silently into the night crying. I just would not have done that. But there was one woman who tied with Leah, and they gave Leah the higher place trophy in the pictures, and they're like, well, why can't I hold it? And they're like, no, it has to be Leah. So at that point in time, that they're pushing this agenda and protecting this trans woman over an actual woman in women's sports. So that's what people are really concerned about. The fact that you cannot just be a woman. You're not going to magically just transform into like this perfect dainty thing with the same bone structure and hormone levels and all density and all other kind of stuff. You're still going to be a man at the end of the day. To the day you die, you will be. Just a fact of life. And so trying to come upon women's spaces and women's shelters and the prisons, the locker rooms, the sports, that's what we're concerned about. That there's no respect for women. There's no respect and consideration for women's feelings. That's what we're concerned about. Like, you can't take womanhood away. We're still gonna be women at the end of the day. But while you're making a mockery out of us, that's not cool. That's not cool. So that's actually what we're concerned about. And in some cases, our literal safety. Concerned about our literal safety. Women deserve to have women spaces. We do. And you don't even have to cut off your junk. You can just go in and say, I'm a woman. That's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. But that's Biden's America. That's Biden's America. It was Obama's America too, but we're in the part two. We're in the part two with a more senile, obviously less charismatic, you know, inferior sort of dude. So it's all, the decline is real. But thank you guys for joining me today on Black Teen News. Please go to blackteennews.com, check out different articles that I have on the website, also different videos that I have on the site. If you guys enjoy what I do here, please consider going to blackteennews.com/donate and supporting the show. Please make sure that you're following me across my different social media platforms. All my handles are at Black Teen News. Except on Twitter, that one's at True Black Tea. But if you're watching this on Facebook and YouTube, the links are right in the description. So make sure that you're following across those different platforms. Please check out different merchandise that I have on the website, like the I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For. Also got the cool goat hoodies and the t-shirts. And I do have those on different colors, but just FYI, the white just really pops. I really like it in the white. I got the white hoodie and the white shirt. They're great. Also, I do have different books that you guys can check out, like through Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. That's a nonfiction faith book that I wrote in the age of COVID. It wasn't specifically only dealing with COVID, but I certainly was inspired, and I wish to God you guys had listened to me, but you didn't. So we had to live through all the crap, but it's still relevant and good for the rest of your life. So go ahead and check that out. All my books are available on Amazon if you search Christina L. Barr. But if you go to blackteennews.com and you go to the merchandise, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website. I do also have historical fiction fantasy for older readers. If you imagine like Civil War meets X-Men, that's what you would get with this series. It's really great. You guys should check it out. And I do also have books for children as well, like the Super Kid 2 book about a boy with overactive imagination. He believes superpowers. He doesn't really, but it's got a lot of great conservative values in it. It's not a political book, but just a lot of good morals that you want to pass on and instill into your kids. And I thank you guys for checking it out. And for people who have left really good reviews on it, it's based on a lot of real life stories about my dad when he was a boy, because he actually at one point believed he was turning into Superboy. So there's a couple different stories in there that are based on real life. But you guys really, really enjoy it, reading it, experiencing it with your kids. The last book that I actually released was Anubis, Princess of the Damned. So if you like vampire sort of paranormal romance books, you guys can check out all kinds of stuff that I write. I love to write. I actually finished completed 30 books by my 30th birthday. So I'm always writing. I am working on a political book that I think you guys will really, really enjoy. And I'll let you know when that is out on the horizon. So thank you guys very much for joining me today, and I will see you tomorrow.